And welcome back to Meeting of the Minds. Today I'm here with the great John Walker, professor, actor, scholar, you name it, he's got it. Thank you for joining us, John.
Well, that's a great introduction. I'm not sure if the scholar works, but I'll take it.
Oh yeah. So I just learned about you more recently. I've been hanging out with some West Chestertons up in Sleepy Hollow, New York.
Oh,
And they
great.
brought up the possibility of bringing in a man named John Walker who impersonates, or however you would say, caricatures of the great G.K. Chesterton, who I'm a big fan of.
Well, I guess impersonation is a good way to go. It started as a play. I'm an actor. I've been an actor for, 40 years. I worked in Hollywood on films. I worked in New York on cop shows. I worked in London in theater and all over the place. And when I was finishing up, I got into this place where, see, as an actor, choices about your career are very arbitrary. People are making them for you. You don't get to come in and say, hey, this scene with Will Smith, I take the Lord's name in vain as the fireman. Could I just say something else? And then Jerry Bruckheimer will look at you and go, no, I'll hire an extra to do it. So it was an idea that, I could pick a piece and make it my own that would be faith fit, like mission fit. And, so that's how the Chesterton thing came about. That was the one character I thought I could actually fit because I'm about the same height and weight as a 6'4", 300-pound guy. So that's how the Chesterton play came about.
Excellent. Yeah, and I read Everlasting Man. I read Orthodoxy. Those are the only two I read. What order would you recommend that people read? I mean, I have this book right here, this Christian writings. It's a compilation: Everlasting Man, Orthodoxy, Heretics, St. Francis, St. Thomas, and The Man Who Saw Thursday.
You're off to a great start already. If you've gone through Everlasting Man and Orthodoxy, the prequel, kind of interestingly, to Orthodoxy is Heretics. But if anybody was going to start, the first thing I would do is send them to the ultimate, the preeminent Chesterton scholar in the world, and that's Dale Ahlquist. He has a website, www.chesterton.org. Really simple to remember. And on that page, he even has a heading that says, who is this guy and why don't I know who he is? Which breaks down everything about Chesterton with an introduction, a reading list. He's written some great books. Chesterton 101 is a great one. Night of the Holy Ghost is a great one. But he also has these Chesterton minutes on YouTube, which are literally 1 minute long, and talking about Chesterton's opinions on all these different topics. So if I was going to start, in fact, when I was writing the play, I spent a lot of time on this website. I would go to Dale Ahlquist's site, the American Chesterton Society, and I would start just breezing through it, reading all the little bits and pieces until you feel pulled into one way or the other. I mean, I started with Father Brown. That's what dragged me in. I was watching it back in 2000 something on PBS, and I thought, wow, Father Brown, that's kind of cool. Because, when you see a mystery and there's a priest in it, because of Hollywood, you expect the priest to be the idiot by the end, or the bad guy, But to have him be this really intelligent sleuth, detective, based on hearing confessions all the time and really knowing the human condition, I was like, wow, that's really cool. So I went and looked up, a Father Brown book at the library, saw the word Chesterton, went, wow, I got to find out about this guy. I'll read some more of his books, which is like 200 books later, and I'm still trying to get through like the first dozen. And that's how I discovered him.
Yeah. So there wouldn't be necessarily a set. I know there's no absolute right order, but would you have them read Heretics before Everlasting Man?
I would even go further back to like Tremendous Trifles. That's a really short book of really short essays, and it's a really good way of going through it fast and finding out his wit and his sense of humor, because he writes in paradox, he turns things on their head, so if you got to get used to that style of writing, I remember the first couple of years of reading Chesterton, I would read a page and go, wait a minute, what? And I'd have to go back and read it again. So I would start off there, and just get introduced and acclimated. Yeah, you can read Heretics before Everlasting Man, sure. I mean, that's kind of like the order of when they were written as well. So, yeah.
All right, great. Now, talk about your journey a little bit. How did you get deeper in the Catholic faith? Were you always
Oh
hardcore
gosh.
Catholic? And then your journey to Steubenville, and then your journey to, well, I guess you spoke about Chesterton already. How you got to that?
Okay, well, I'll try to keep it short because it is a very circuitous route. But, you know, it's funny. When I got to Franciscan, I thought, wow, I've been on this crazy journey. How did I get here? And then I realized that almost everybody who's here had gone through a weird journey that brought them here. I came into the church late. I came in when I was in my 40s. I was looking at my kids at mass one day, and I thought, I gotta show them the way. I gotta show them how to become a man. And that means I got to walk the walk. And, you know, Chesterton said, you can't become a Christian just by going to church. You know, it's like standing in a garage, becoming a car, you know, it's not going to happen. You got to put some work into it. So I came into the church late, and I left Hollywood shortly after that in the filming industry because I was getting offers for projects on cable that I just couldn't do. Morally, there's just content I just couldn't deal with. So we went up to Vermont and started teaching, and I really didn't like it because in the People's Republic of Vermont, there's being outspoken Catholic was not so easy. At one of the colleges I worked at, they came into my office and took down my icon of Mary, the rosary beads off my desk, and they locked them in a closet and said, you know, you can't have these out. They're really offensive.
Wow.
So at that point, I said, you know what, the heck with it, the heck with acting, the heck with that. And my wife and I became managers of a retreat center, the Mary Theotokos Monastic Center, this 400-acre sprawling farm in Vermont on the Canadian border. And we just broke ourselves there. The work was so hard, you know, going into farming and heavy construction work at 50 was a strange choice. When I was younger, you know, and I was in much better shape, and I was, you know, weight training and doing Highland Games and stuff, and I was used to picking up heavy things. But when I was 50, so anyway, about 5 years into that, we were just so broken down, and I was looking for a college for my son. He's interested in theater, kind of like the family business. And every college we went to that said they were Catholic had issues. They weren't, you know, really Catholic. They were Catholic in name, maybe. So I looked up Franciscan, and they had a great theater department. I said, you know, well, maybe you go there and check it out. So I got on their website and read about it. And the first thing I found was a listing for a job as a theater professor at Franciscan. Yeah. So I just laughed that one off. Told my wife, you know, about it. How funny is that? And she's like, well, put in for it. And I said, well, no, I'm not going to put it in for it. I'm too old. They're going to get someone hip and cool and young and with energy. And she said, you got your paperwork, just put in for it. And before I knew it, I was at the interview and ended up at Franciscan. And it was strange because there were a lot of steps in getting to Franciscan at that time, just like getting to the monastery where we were up against the wall and it's just not going to work. And I would go into adoration and say, look, God, if you want me to go to Franciscan, I'll go. I'll go to Nineveh, whatever you want. Just show me how I'm supposed to do this. And then the next day, some guy would show up and say, hey, I unload antiques in Pittsburgh. I'll take your stuff down. Oh, okay. And another person said, hey, I'm getting rid of this car. Could you drive it down to Ohio? I'm dropping it off with some friends. Okay. You know, it just made it really evident that we were supposed to make that move. You know, it's funny. You know, the most dangerous prayer, and probably the most dangerous time to say it, is if right after communion, you get on your knees and you say, send me on my mission. Because he will. He will. He'll put you on a farm in the middle of Vermont in a freezing cold winter with cows trying not to freeze to death, or he'll send you off to be a professor in your late 50s to teach theater, or he'll send you off to EWTN. Because I was here teaching, and Ben Weicker, he created Saints versus Scoundrels on EWTN. He asked me if I would like to play Chesterton. He had heard I was writing a one-man show, and I had a one-man show. I'd written the beginning and the end, and there was a middle in my head somewhere, and tons of napkin notes and stuff. So I came down to EWT and I played Chesterton. And one day we were on the set, and it was going really well. And the director comes over and goes, hey, I hear you got a one-man show all written. Ben told me it's about Chesterton. That must be great. And I look over, and Ben Weicker, who's a professor here, is in the background laughing and pointing at me. And I said, yeah, I got a script. He said, well, we'd love to see it. I said, all right, I would too. So I went back to the university. I wrote 7 drafts in 7 weeks, which is something I've never done. I'm a really slow writer. So that had to be the Holy Spirit. I sent it down, and then they said, well, come down here and film it. We want to show everybody this piece. I was just thinking I would tour, you know, small parish halls or something, not be on EWTN with an audience of like what, 150 million. So I did it. They liked it. Then they wanted to do a TV series. So I guess I'll be going down and doing more. And like I said, Chesterton started with me looking for a one-man show, some kind of one-man show that I could do that would fit my faith. I looked at a lot of them. I'd written a couple, but I hadn't found a character that I really fit. I mean, like I said, I'm almost 6'5". I'm about 300 pounds. I'm a really big guy. And so I couldn't play C.S. Lewis, or I couldn't play Tolkien, you know? So Father Brown introduced me to Chesterton. And as soon as I found out that he was a devout Catholic, a great writer, walked around in capes, carried a handgun, had a giant Bowie knife he called his letter opener. I mean, he was a real character. And I thought, okay, maybe I could play him. And then when I saw how he was my height and weight, I said, okay, that's it. And that's when I started writing it. So that's kind of like a brief overview of the journey.
That's great. And I think about, as you said, as an actor, I have a buddy who's 36 or 37, aspiring actor, does theater in New York City. And he said, unfortunately, it's obviously it's incredibly difficult. And he said he sees a lot of garbage, like you alluded to, about how, you know, they make you do certain things that are unethical. And he also said a lot of the, I guess, the parties or different things after the people as they congregate, there's a lot of occult and superstitious practices. Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, I didn't see it so much in New York because I was I was on cop shows and I would come in for like a week and then I would leave. So I wasn't really part of the in crowd to go to the parties. But in Hollywood, I went to a lot of the parties, either because they had come to the club that I was a bouncer at and met me there, because that was pretty high end, where a lot of celebs used to come, or they would, and you know, if you invite a bouncer to your Hollywood party, the next time when you come to the club with Winona Ryder, you can get in, you know, that sort of thing. And Hollywood, I saw it a lot. There was a really strange underbelly of a kind of satanic, dark worship going on there. I've read a lot of theories about that, and you know, a lot of people say that's the case. Some people say it's all rumor, but yeah, I noticed it at the parties. There was always these get-togethers that seemed pretty mellow until most of the people left, in a certain group that was left behind would then like take on this sort of, you know, they break out the Ouija board or the tarot cards, and that was, you know, bad enough, but they actually would talk about get-togethers where they had like satanic worship services or Church of Satan, and actually use those terms. And that really shocked me, because I thought, oh, that was only for crazy people, you know, but yet the celebrities and the movers and the shakers and the people of real power were really into that kind of weird darkness. And that's what first started to get me really concerned about even staying in Hollywood or raising a family there or whatever.
Yeah. Now, would you recommend for my buddy that maybe go kind of more the independent route like you did? Like if he pursued the normal path, the typical path, are you almost inevitably led at least into that world? And that,
No.
what would you say?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you could be a professional ball player, you know, and you could have a choice. You know, you can take your celebrity status and use it in strange ways, or you could just go to the batting cage and play the game and work hard and do it. It's the same thing with Hollywood. It's the same thing with acting. There's so many arbitrary ways your career could go. First of all, the fact that he's doing theater is awesome, because that's where you really learn to act. And film acting is just economizing theater acting. You know, if you're on theater and you're saying, oh my, look at that tree, then when you're on camera, you're just, oh my, look at that tree. You know, you're just bringing it way down. You're acting right behind the eyelids. So if you can really pull off theater, you just got to bring it down to a neutral level and do television to film. You know, you don't start having to worry about the big parts until you get a little further down the road. But I would say go for everything that he could. The problem with the auditions is, you know, you get a page with your lines, and then you don't know what the whole script's about till like the third callback, when you're in the room with Steve Buscemi and the producers, and you're looking at your script and you're saying, oh my gosh, this is who I am. So he should keep doing theater. He should look for an indie project. Right now, it's true that Broadway is really excited about one man and one person shows, and Andevere Smith is doing one called L.A. Twilight. The C.S. Lewis guys are bringing in The Reluctant Convert. So it's good to always have a thing you're working on your own, because someday somebody's going to offer that to you. You know, you can step up to the plate and swing every day. One day you're going to get a perfect pitch. And if you're ready, like Hamlet says, the readiness is all, you'll be able to swing away. So it's good to have something like that, like a project in your back pocket, and then pursue the rest of your career, whichever way it takes you, you know, because that's why you can't give advice. It's not like one size fits all. You know, when I went to New York, I had left LA. I thought I was done with TV. I was really freaked out by the kind of weirdos I met in Hollywood, celebrity weirdos. And I was also, you know, I said, look, if my career is going to be decided by people who don't even know me and decide I should play this role because of my nose or my forehead is the wrong shape, then I'm already too tall to be on camera anyway. Forget it. And when I got to New York, I was doing a Shakespeare festival up in Hudson Valley, and I was at the cast party, and I was sitting down at a table, and the producers of the theater company came in, and all the actors ran over to the, oh, hey, how are you? I'm looking forward to next summer. I hope you're going to be right. I hope I can audition. And I didn't go over there, and I sat over to the corner drinking my beer and looking really sour. And this middle-aged woman came over and sat down next to me, and she said, hey, how come you're not over there schmoozing the director? I said, directors are like casting directors. They're a bunch of piranhas. I don't have to kiss butt to get my roles. So what do you do? And she goes, oh, I'm a casting director. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. And she goes, no, you're a funny kid. Here's my card. When you come to New York, look me up. And that card led to the most successful period of my life as an actor with the people it introduced me to and the work I got. And the weird thing is, and this is the frustrating thing your friend might mention to you, is that even though I went to train in London, even though I went to graduate school for my MFA in acting, even though I had done all this work that looked great on a resume, the thing that got me my break was accidentally saying the wrong thing to a person I didn't know at a party. So
show you divine providence. We try, and then when the Lord's ready for it to happen, boom.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, the readiness is all. Shakespeare wrote that for Hamlet for a reason. If you can deal with the arbitrary nature of your work and just be ready, you know, you as an athlete understand that. You know, you can't say, oh, I got a wrestling match in 2 months. Great. And then you'll go back to watching TV and playing Xbox and eating whatever you want. You train all the way up to the event. Back when I was young and I was doing the heavy lifting stuff, I wouldn't just wait till the Highland Games to pick up something heavy. I'd work my way up to that weight. It's the same thing with acting. The downtime can kill you if you don't use it. So if you continue to keep in training with your skill sets and your instrument and what you do, you'll be ready when the perfect pitch comes to take it. So working on an indie project on the side, preparing something like that to do, practicing monologues, getting auditions ready for whatever you might come against. And just remember that, you know, you're a character type, and as soon as you grow into that type, they're probably going to start casting you. When I was young, I thought I would get all the parts. I got these really little, I was the big guy, so I played all the bad guys. But when I became overweight and a middle-aged white guy, I was everybody's cop. So you kind of find your niche at what you're good at, and you kind of keep yourself ready for anything as it comes along. And then right after that, it's divine providence. It's if God, you know, finds it right for you, I guess. So it's tough. Great. Not much advice, but
no, it's still very good stuff. Now, me being the mindset guy, my background in sports psychology, I always look at the things through what's your mindset here, what's your mindset there. You said something before about the mindset you need to have while you're reading Chesterton. You're not necessarily reading it the same way you're doing theological reading or spiritual reading. You need to have a certain mindset. And then the other mindset I wanted to ask you about was, what's your mindset when you get into the character of G.K. Chesterton? Could you speak about both of those?
Yeah, sure. As far as the mindset for Chesterton goes, you've got to be ready for antithesis, which is something Shakespeare used a lot. You know, compare you to a summer's day. This is that, to be or not to be. Everything was like juxtaposed in comparison with Shakespeare. And you get used to, when you read him, to have him describing things by describing other things. And Chesterton kind of takes the traditional view, like, oh, we are Catholics, or we are Christians, and we had a king that came and saved us. He flips that on that head and he goes, yeah, we had a king who was wrapped up in swaddling clothes and couldn't lift his head. the weakest, most vulnerable person on the face of the earth, born to people who were so poor they had no hotel. Yet that was our king. He flips the topic on its head. And so you have to kind of get used to reading for that paradox and expecting that sudden twist or turn, which is why he's so good at mystery writing and poetry and plays and essays and journals and books. Yeah, I know. So I was going to say earlier, if you want to get into Chesterton, pick what your favorite writing is, whether it's poetry or plays or theological tracts or essays, and just read his stuff in that area. He's probably written something there. I think you have to kind of develop a style of reading and understanding to follow him, and that takes more exposure to him. You know, once you get used to his style of paradox, you can follow him and get used to how he's going to take you on this journey to the point.
And as a wrestler, I think about this as an intense athlete, former wrestler. My tendency is to plow through information. Let's absorb it as fast as I can.
Yeah.
Should I maybe take the mentality with Chesterton as I'm walking peacefully through the park slowly, and what would be the good mentality to apply to that as opposed to plow through? If
you go to an art museum, the only way you're impacted by a work of art is if you take time to look at it and make yourself available to it. If you speed walk through a museum and just flip your head back and forth, you'll walk out and you won't remember a thing. Right. Chesterton is as complex as a Rembrandt or a Monet or a famous painting that you have to look at for a while and allow it to make an impact. You know, that's how we work. You know, there's beauty, truth, and goodness. You look at something, the beauty of it transforms you, stops you. Balthasar, the famous Swiss theologian, said it arrests you, it stops you in your world. Then it speaks truth to you, something personal to you. And then that changes you and makes you rethink things, and then it sends you on your way to live a better life. And I mean, that makes sense because that's what Jesus did. When you encountered him, he literally changed you, maybe gave you a new name. And then after a while of being with him, you learned the truth about life and about yourself, and then he set you off to live the good. You know, that's the thing. We can't live under the bushel basket. Whatever, we got to go. We got to be out there in the world. So I think the trick with Chesterton is not to plow through, which I tend to do too. I want to get right to okay, what's the point? Where are we going? What's the point? Is to slow down and take it slowly and let it kind of get into your head. Sometimes I would read just a paragraph in the beginning and then put the book away and walk around and think about that for a little while and then come back to it. Because it takes a while to read what he's written and then kind of translate it into like how we think and then go back to the way he thinks. Because, I mean, the man was a genius. He could dictate a book to his secretary while reading another one at the same time and not get lost on either. You know, people would literally see him pick up a book. He would say, well, I'm going to write a biography on Thomas Aquinas. Bring me everything that he's got. And he'd have this stack of books. And he would literally be flipping through the pages, but retain everything he saw. So to get on the level of a genius like that, unless you're that kind of genius, which I am generations away from ever being, I got to take it kind of slowly and enjoy it like a good meal and not wolf it down really quick, but chew it thoroughly and digest it, you know?
Yeah, my problem is I wolf down my food like no other. As a former wrestler who's used to make weight and now you're able to eat for the first time in 2 days, eating becomes a difficulty. But I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, no, I see where you're going too. That's absolutely true. Take your time with Chesterton and let him get into your head, and then you'll be able to follow his trail, which is interesting.
Yeah. Chesterton is honestly too smart for his own good.
Maybe. What was the other thing you said? Something about getting into character, or?
So, yeah. Well, actually, one quick point to what you just said.
Oh yeah.
Now, as you said about reading, sometimes just reading a paragraph and then stepping back. I've heard Bishop Barron even say the same thing: read a page and then walk away. And for me, that becomes overwhelming because I look at this big book here. And I say, how will I ever get through this? I'm not a fast reader, and so that I've become overwhelmed.
No, I get that. When I was really young and I was trying to figure out where I was going in my faith life, and I was going to all these different churches and stuff, a friend of mine who was Catholic said, well, look, if you want to know about Jesus, John, read the Bible. I went, read the Bible? It's that thick. What are you talking about? He goes, John, just read a page a day. In like a year, you'll be done. And I thought that was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. But I went and I did it. And it was about a year and a half and I was done. And ever since then, I realized, you know, you can do a page a day. I mean, it's not a race. Who cares when you finish or not? So just the simple exposure to reading and letting things ruminate and ponder, you know, as you go through your day, you can get through the material. It can make more of an impact because you're allowing it. You know, you can't be impacted by beauty if you don't allow it in. So you have to give it some time to get through to you. And I think with Chesterton being the type of writer he is, you really need to take your time getting into him. Otherwise, you'll get frustrated or confused, and you'll just move on to something easier.
Yeah, it definitely takes diligence to read, for sure.
Yeah, and you know, it's just like anything else. You are not going to bench press 8 hours a day. You're going to bench press maybe on Monday and Wednesday and Friday, you know, and give your body a chance to recover on the in-between days and fuel your body maybe in cardio in between. So it's the same thing. You're just reading Chesterton for the certain sets and reps you need to do it, and then letting your body recover or your brain recover, because this is heavy lifting for your brain, to be sure, and giving your body a chance to kind of recover and then move to doing it again. You know, because if you just went in and said, oh, I've got to get strong, I'm going to bench press for 8 hours, you know, you'd ruin yourself. You'd be a mess. So yeah, I think you do it in steps.
Good point and good comparison. and now how do you get yourself in the right mindset to portray Chesterton? I know there was Chuck Trollberg. Do you look at him?
I love him.
What do you do?
Well, I love to give the nod to Chuck. I met him at a Chesterton conference, and you know, I was sitting there going, she's probably gonna hate me because I did a terrible Chesterton. And we sat down and we taught. He's a history teacher, and we just jammed for hours on every possible subject matter in politics. And he's just, the guy's brilliant, wonderful guy, and he was so friendly. But before I had done Chesterton, I had never seen him because we were up in Vermont where we had no cable TV. And we were just, you know, I never watched his show. So I didn't even know who Dale Ahlquist was at the time. So I think when I first got into Chesterton, I was writing the play and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff I have to say. And I talked to one of the priests here and I said, hey, who on campus is the Chesterton guy? Who knows everything about him? And they said, well, the old president, Father Terry, used to know everything about him. I said, well, where's he at? And they go, oh, he's at the Friary in Loretto, PA. So I drove out there and I said, look, I want to write this play about Chesterton. There are all these great quotes, you know, happiness is only gratitude doubled by wonder and all this stuff, you know, a dead thing can follow the current. It takes a living thing to swim against it. What should I do? And he said, well, first of all, stop thinking about the quotes. The quotes are there, but show us the man. Show us the guy behind it. Show us the guy who would get lost. Show us the guy who took joy in fairy tales. Show us the guy who couldn't have children and how that hurt him so much with him and his wife because they were so desperate for a big family. Show us that guy. Show us the big elf. And so that shifted everything. That was like a paradigm shift. And I started writing for that. So I think when I'm about to get into playing him, because I'm an actor, I do actor stuff. I take a couple things that Chesterton would have and I put them in my pocket. So whenever I'm lost or I'm losing my way or the lights are getting too bright, I'm starting to get out of character, I can put my hand in my pocket and feel something that he would have and go, oh yeah, he would have that because of this and this and this. So he loves to draw with chalk. You know, he talks about how chalk is also the cliffs of England and Dover and how a piece of chalk is so important to him. I put one of those in my pocket. And then I see chalk dust on my hand as I'm acting, and it brings me into his mindset right away. I have a playlist from the minute I get up to the minute I get out of makeup that I listen to, which is all music from his time and from his era, like the top 40 hits of 1920, you know. And of course, you know, I try to get into his day and where he was before the minute I step on stage. So I'm acting before I get on stage. not just stepping on stage and start acting. So there's a lot of little mind tricks I do. But I found the most valuable one was the music. Of course, knowing what the script is about and knowing what I'm going to say for that day when we're shooting, what scenes we're working on. But the biggest one is having something in my pocket. I mean, Chesterton does a whole routine about how his pockets are bottomless pits, and someday at the resurrection, when the dead arise, and all these things will arise from his pockets, like from the depths of the sea, and there'll be a long line of things that he's lost in the depths of his pockets. So to put things in my pockets that he might have, and then when I'm acting, to feel them in my pockets while I'm talking, puts me immediately in his mindset, because you think this would have been important to him, that's why he's carrying it. So when you feel it in your pocket, you go, oh yeah, it's the chalk, like the Cliffs of Dover, because I'm an Englishman and I like to draw cartoons. Oh yeah, that, and boom, triggers, like mental triggers.
I know all about that. We tell our athletes that all the time. That's big. And I love how you said about show them the man, because my first instinct would be, not an actor, but my first instinct would be, what are the lines? I got to get the lines. Show me the lines. Memorize the lines.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
There's a deeper level than that.
Yeah, I was so, Chesterton's overwhelming. He's written more than a person could read his lifetime. I think only probably Dale Ahlquist might have read, I shouldn't say might, has read everything that he's ever written and commented on it too. So Dale's on the level of scholarship as GK himself. And when you first get into reading him and researching him, you think, because I made this mistake. I saw the Father Brown thing. I found out the guy's name and I said, okay, I'm going to make a one-man show on this guy, GK Chesterton. How'll I do that? I'll read everything he wrote. That'll be easy. And I'll take a bunch of notes about things he said about himself and what other people said about him. And I'll start putting it together. I never finished that part. When I started writing the play, I had a big giant bin full of books with notes in every margin and napkins with pictures and ideas, just like a pile of things. And so because I was thinking, I've got to do the quotes. I've got to show people all the cool things he said. And it took Father Terry to say to me, show his joy, show his humor, show that he can laugh at his own jokes, show the storyteller, the guy who made long lectures without a note in his hand. When he went to Notre Dame in Indiana to give all these series of lectures, they were so excited because they're like, we're going to collect all his notes and we're going to keep them in a library and we'll be the only place that has lecture notes from Chesterton. And they were horrified to find out he never brought one. He just went off the top. So just show the man himself, his joys, his sorrows, his fears, because there was a period of his life when he was young where the occult was really dragging him into a different way of living. And then you'll show the man. The quotes can come out secondary. Show the man first. And that was the thing about thinking about how to get into the character that really worked for me, because I could find out what his fears, what his loves, the things that make him tick are, and play to those. And then it wasn't so overwhelming because I didn't have to narrate an entire library, of quotations.
That makes a lot of sense. That's great.
Yeah, well, it's funny because people say, hey, John, you're the Chesterton scholar. You should come here and talk about Chesterton. I'm like, you talk to Dale Ahlquist if you want a scholar. I'm an actor. I'm acting like I know what I'm talking about. And it's funny because now it's been 2 years since we filmed the first one. We're going to film some more later. There's people, we're talking about putting together an indie movie right now. And I'm still studying him and I'm still going, oh, why didn't I read that before I did that thing? It just keeps going,
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. But you must know quite a bit about Chesterton's philosophies and his theories. I just listened to Dale Ahlquist on a Sensus Fidelium video, it might've been a few years ago, talking about the social teachings of Chesterton. And he said about the four big things that are destroying, what do you say, society or the family. And he said, big business, big business, big government, feminism, and public education.
Yeah. And he's actually, really taking some steps in the public education area by starting these Chesterton academies all over the country, which are classics. They're schools for teaching classics to bring back moral virtue into education, because in public education right now, that couldn't be more different. It's math and science, but the classics of theater and literature and philosophy and ethics and aesthetics aren't there. So he started these Chesterton academies that point towards that kind of teaching, to start young people on the right track early, as opposed to what public education has been doing wrong. You know, I mean,
K through 8. That's a K through 8.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's actually through high school. I think it's through high school mostly. You know, I mean, because they come up with theories in public education like, oh, this is how we're going to teach sex to their kids. Oh, but don't tell the parents. They don't need to know. Let's just do it. Or, you know, they come up with all these philosophies of teaching, which are younger than the kids are teaching. You know, they haven't really tried them out yet. And if you're teaching moral virtue, which is so important, you've got to go to those courses, because with moral virtue, if everybody came out of high school with moral virtues, we may not have the situations in society that we have today happening. So yeah.
Any near New York City? New York City, North Jersey, any in that area, Central Jersey?
Yeah, there are. New York State, I think, has a couple, and I think there's one starting up in New Jersey. I think there are like 8 going on right now.
Must be a website.
Yeah, it's on Dale Alquist's site. I know there's one here that we started up in Catholic Central High School. We put a mini Chesterton Academy within there, like a classics program. So that's happening here. But yeah, he's already taking on a lot of these things that Chesterton said was wrong with society head on. So
that's great.
I know I'm singing the praises of Dale here. That's good.
I'm gonna look it up.
Good.
For sure. Now, so one of the things I heard at the social teachings, he talks about, it seems like he took the works of Pope Leo XIII, Rerum Novarum, and saw, you know, again, critique the right, critique the left. I have my sides mixed up here. And he spoke about distributism. What do you know about this, and what would you be able to share about how that makes more sense than maybe the current model of what we're seeing?
Well, you know, we've got two sides of the coin, supposedly. We've got socialism, which never works. And we've got capitalism, which ends up leaving people in the dust. The thing about distributism that really works is that everybody has some ownership in what they make. It kind of goes back to the medieval world, when a shire was created. You know, a monastery moves in, they start irrigating the soil. Suddenly they're teaching classes, they're taking care of the sick, and people show up. People who can blacksmith are taking care of the horses for plowing. People who can build are helping to build more structures. People who can work in like a hospital setting can work there, and in the monastery. So it's kind of like giving everybody a piece of what they're doing. They own part of their own business, so their wealth is more evenly distributed. It's a complex theory, but it really makes more sense because everybody's actually working for the company they own. It's like what's happening now is the mom and pop shops are disappearing. You know, there used to be a little local drugstore that you could go into, and now there's a Thrifty, a CVS, and a Walgreens all across the corner from each other. You know, it's like they put Lowe's and Home Depots right across the street, and the mom and pop hardware stores are going down. And those small shops actually pour money into the local community, hire in the local community, and everyone in that shop kind of owns a piece of that store. And that's sort of a way of looking back at distributism, is to have everybody have a piece of the pie. They have some onus then to make it work, and the community has some onus to support that. And if you own part of your own land, if you own part of your own business, it changes your mentality than just going to work for a giant corporation. I think it was Chesterton's brother who had the most to say about that. And when he died, I think Chesterton picked up the flag and kept going. And Hilaire Belloc, of course, too.
That was another thing I was going to ask you, if you could talk about the importance of his relationship with Belloc.
The hybrid, Chesterlock. Yeah. Well, I know they drank a lot because there's stories of some of Belloc's pub crawls, and great stories about conversations they had. But Belloc was the one who prayed every day for Chesterton to come into the Catholic Church. You know, he made that a mission in his life to pray for Chesterton's conversion. They were so close that, people called him the hybrid. That, you know, it went by one name, Chesterlock. And George Bernard Shaw used to give him a lot of grief about his friendship with Hilaire Belloc. And Belloc would write songs and write poetry, and so they got along on a whole lot of levels. Brothers in arms, I guess is one way to put it, but closer than best friends because they were both fighting a battle together, you know. Belloc was just more of a bulldog and would go head first in, and Chesterton would come around the corner with a little sense of humor, you know, the type of person who makes you laugh in a conversation and then zings in the penetrating truth right after the laugh. Because when you laugh, you know, you open yourself up, you know, because nobody looks good when they laugh. We all look kind of silly and stupid and we snort and whatever. So you get instantly vulnerable when you laugh. And then once you get the person to laugh, that's when you deliver the real truth while they're open, you know, when their guard is down. And that's when you can really get to them. And Chesterton had a way of doing that by weaving a way in, whereas Belloc was more like the juggernaut, you know, head first. So there's so many stories about those two. It's a great thing. In fact, the film that we're talking about making is called The Hybrid, and it's about the relationship between those two. So we'll see where that goes, you know, if that happens. But
that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And now you mentioned also Shaw, who is on the other end of the spectrum, right, of Chesterton, and how important it is that they were able to completely disagree, fierce opponents with their ideas, but yet they could still hear one another out. They could go out after they debate ferociously, and they're okay. How important is that nowadays?
What happened to us as a species that we can't do that? You know, if you stand in the street and say something that the other guy doesn't agree with, it goes into, they turn into Antifa. I mean, we can't disagree anymore. You know, there's no civil discourse, and you know, you're never going to solve anything if you can't have a conversation. You know, and say, okay, I see your point of view. I understand that. That makes good sense. Here's what I'm thinking. And not get instantly offended by, oh my gosh, you disagree with me? Well, I have to kill you. You know, we stopped listening. And Chesterton and Shaw would get on stage and argue big things like, is there a God? You know, big topics. And Shaw would say to him, you know, Chesterton would say, you know, you're so thin, they should put a flag on you. You look like a flagpole. And Shaw would say, well, to look at you'd think the country was having, you know, people were starving, right? Because you've eaten all the food. Yeah. You know, who you look like you beached yourself and someone should roll you back into the sea. I mean, really.
Were they mad when they were going at it?
Never. That's the thing. They could enjoy the conversation. They could enjoy the debate. And they became great friends because afterwards they'd go out for drinks. Well, Shaw, he was a teetotaler for most of the time. They go out for meals, and they became the beloved enemy, you know, because Chesterton understood you can't change someone's way of thinking by beating them up. You can by listening and talking and coming back with comments that they're able to handle at the stage they're at. You can't give them more than they can handle. And I mean, yeah, he jokes about carrying a revolver around and saying, if he ever met, you know, someone who says, oh, I'd rather kill myself than become a Christian, he'd say, okay, well, here you go. Go ahead. Oh, no, not now? No, now you won't do it? Okay, well, maybe you should rethink that. But he would have arguments with Darrow and with Shaw and these huge public debates. You know, we don't see that. You know, a theater filled with a couple thousand people, and they're up there at their podiums slinging, you know, stuff at each other, talking deep metaphysics and theology and, you know, evolution and creation, and then also insulting each other like really barbed insults, and then laugh and go off and have something to eat. We don't have that anymore. You know, we literally don't have, look at our government, this war between Republicans and Democrats. Nobody's talking.
Go ahead. You're right.
No, I'm just saying that, you know, we've lost that skill of conversation. When I always wonder when that happened. How did we mess that up?
It's probably when the Italians came to America. Let me give you a scenario of what it's like in an Italian-American family. So we do everything wrong. Everything I learned in psychology, where you stick with the issue, you don't judge the person, you judge the issue. In our family, it's that was stupid, and you're stupid for saying that. And then at least after the dinner, everyone got along, but things would get heated.
I have never eaten a better meal than I used to when I would go to my friend Rick Corbellino's house, and they would open up these tables where like every aunt and uncle and relative and cousin would show up, and the food would just keep coming. You know, he had a big Italian family in Connecticut, and I used to hang out there as much as I could because I just loved that nucleus, you know, that family. But it's true, you know, I don't know where we lost the ability to be wrong or lost the ability to be disagreed with, you know? I mean, you can see it on Facebook all the time. People are just at each other like hammers and tongs, arguing about a topic and then going off on a thread about a different topic, when you can't just say, well, that's a great idea. You know, I never thought about that. Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. And I agree with you on some points, but this is where I'd like you to go. I think it was Bertrand Russell who was the conversationalist who used to always start his side of the argument with, I completely agree with everything you said. But here's what I'd like to add, you know, because then it wasn't an argument, it was more of a discussion, and we've lost the art of discussion. You know, we don't have that anymore. And George Bernard Shaw and Chesterton, that really impressed me because they were able to, I mean, call each other names in front of people and be defiantly opposed to each other's point of view, but then be the greatest of friends for their whole lives, you know?
That's why I really look at Chesterton as someone that we could really model with the humor. And I guess if I can't change that in someone else, first work on myself. How could I bring some of Chesterton to me that maybe if I bring that into my debate against whatever, a radical leftist, maybe we'll be able to have that civil conversation.
No, you're so right. You're absolutely right. I remember I was talking to a theology professor here, and I was saying, man, there's so much stuff about Pope Francis right now with this Amazon synod that's going on and stuff people are complaining about. I'm like, really, what should I be thinking, you know, about all this stuff? And he goes, you should be thinking about yourself. You should be thinking about your spiritual journey. Let the Pope take care of his own. And, you know, I kind of stopped me for a while because I thought I was going to get a whole different answer. I was like, yeah, you're right. He goes, you know, that whole thing about the log in your eye and everything? I went, yeah, okay. It's true. You know,
Still applies?
Yeah, you got to work on yourself, you know, work on your spiritual journey. Don't try to fix other people's, you know, but if they come to you with questions, you can answer them, you know. It's just, you got to remember, you can only give them what they're able to chew on, you know. You can't shove all that steak in their mouth on the first bite. They may just want a couple appetizers, you know, so you got to take your time a little bit.
All right. So I guess for a guy who's naturally a little bit more like Bellick, maybe what I could do is I could load up my pockets. And then when I start having a discussion, I could start, that'll help recenter me, cue me to thinking more like Chesterton.
Well, I love Bishop Barron's baseball analogy, maybe because, you know, I was a first baseman for a while. But the thing is, you know, if you want to teach someone about baseball, you don't say, oh, here's the infield fly rule and here's the manual for the book. Read all the rules and memorize those. We'll talk. No, you take them to a ball game, minor league, where you get up close or wherever, and they see the grass and they see the uniforms. They smell that summer evening air, and they fall in love with the beauty of the game. Maybe they even realize that it's like life, you know, long moments of kind of same thing, punctuated by sudden, quick action, and they want to play it. Then they play it. Then they learn the rules. So, you know, bring people into the church with beauty. You know, you don't have to preach to them. Let them see how together you are, how happy you are, how joyful you are, how you are able to come back from things and still keep a good attitude. And they'll be like, I'd like to do that. The thing Gene's doing, why is he always so okay? And then they want to know, you know? Yeah. So you're just leaving the door open behind you.
As opposed to you're playing at Wrigley Field. If you hit the ball into the ivy, that's a ground rule double. And if you hit the ball here, that's out of bounds. That's a foul ball.
Let me explain to you the designated hitter. You know, I mean,
if you hit the foul pole, it's a home run.
Yeah. Can you imagine an 8-year-old kid with a bat and a glove going, oh, I just want to play baseball with the kids in the neighborhood, Dad? You go, absolutely, you should. But here's the rule book that just came out on the American, you know, the kid will.
You show them the diving catch, someone sliding into the base. Yeah, right? Good point.
Yeah, the great moments, you know, you fall in love with something. You know, our faith should be a love affair. It's not a job.
Yeah, and going back to exactly what you said, show the man. We're searching for Christ. not the ideas of Christ. I mean, of course, doctrine is paramount. It's very important.
Yeah.
But you're searching for a person.
Yeah, and systematic theology, all that stuff is great to see how the Old Testament or the New Testament was already being spoken about and pointed to in the Old Testament, seeing the line of how it worked, very important. But getting yourself right to be able to live close to Christ and how you live will give you a witness to everybody around you. You know, some of the greatest saints were witnesses to the faith by how they lived, not necessarily what they said, you know? And, you know, you may regret saying too much, but you'll never regret listening too much. So I think the whole thing comes down to how do you portray yourself when you step into the public arena? You know, do you come out there and just like attack people with theology and words, or do you actually live your faith? Because that's integrity. I think people are drawn to authenticism, you know, and if you're authentic in your faith because you're living it, it speaks more volumes than you could ever, you know, speak in a hermeneutics class.
That's right. I think in the Bible, the New Testament, somewhere, one the disciples said, "Show us the Lord," or "We've come to see Jesus." It's like that's what they want to see when they look at us. They want to see Christ.
Yeah, I know, and that's hard enough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know, because we're all frail, we're all human, we all make mistakes. So working on that, you know, it's like when I'm working on something in my office and I'm really hammering away and somebody comes in and says, "Oh, Mr. Walker, I'd like to talk with you about something. It's important. I just want some advice." Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. I've got to literally close the laptop lid and take a breath and go ahead. You know, you're right. We have to be ambassadors of Christ, and that has more to do with how we live and what we do than what we say. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Excellent stuff. So any upcoming gigs, where can people find more about you, your work? Are you going to come out to the West Chestertons in New York, just above New York City, or is that just a rumor?
No, I would like to. And it's still in the works. I mean, they're talking, a lot of public appearances, excuse me, got postponed this year, naturally, because of the virus and how the world kind of turned on its head. So I have no idea kind of where some of those things are, but I know they're in the works. The next gig for me, I guess, will be trying to figure out how I teach theater in the fall from social distancing. Going back to teaching college, you know, with a face shield or a mask. I haven't figured that one out yet. Because I'm personable. I like to, you know, I'm the kind of coach who doesn't yell at you from the sidelines, but puts my arm around you and says, "Hey, you know what, on that next play, you know, and I know you're thinking this because I saw you, you know," and making it a very personal approach. So it's going to be hard to social distance. So, but besides the teaching coming up, I know next summer we're filming 2 more episodes of Chesterton. We're filming Chesterton Station, the George Bernard Shaw visit, and the Robert Louis Stevenson visit. The Shaw visit is great because it's all about when Chesterton and Shaw went off to be in a cowboy movie that James Barrie made. You know, James Barrie of Peter Pan used to make silent films, and George Bernard Shaw and Chesterton and a couple other people got together and they went off in costume and filmed like a cowboy movie in England. So it's going to kind of cover some of that playfulness. And Stevenson's an interesting one. We're going to talk about duality because, you know, Jekyll and Hyde was his big book. And I mean, people think a lot about Treasure Island, but he wrote Jekyll and Hyde in 3 days. Because he knew about duality. He knew about the two sides of the human being. So that episode's going to be a lot about that. And then after that, you know, we're still talking about the movie. We're talking about some public appearances. I think when I say we, I mean the royal we. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes and where it leads to. It doesn't matter really. You know, if I can serve God with this work, then so be it. I'm grateful and I'll go and do it. And if God has other plans for me, so be it. I'll go and do them. It doesn't matter, you know. But if we can bring one person closer to Christ by the work we're doing with the film or the series, that's it, you know. Absolutely. So yeah, I have some ideas and some stuff, but it's dangerous to make plans. You'll end up in Ohio. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So where do we send people? You have a website, social media pages.
Yeah.
Link it in the bio underneath the video.
Yeah, Encounter Chesterton is a website. I think it's Encounter GK Chesterton, or maybe it's just Encounter Chesterton, which is my website that shows about how to contact me, all the stuff that's going on, what's happening. Encounter Chesterton also has a Facebook page. So people can go there. They can also contact me through there. And there's an email link to it. Yeah, so I guess the best way to get a hold of me for that stuff, if you don't just want to go to Franciscan and look me up on the webpage, is to go to Encounter Chesterton. I'm wondering if it is Encounter or if it's Encounter GK.
Let's pull it up.
Yeah, I know. I just started doing that.
Either way, you could send it to me. I'll make sure I have it linked right in the show notes on YouTube.
Yeah, Encounter GK Chesterton. There it is. .com. So I guess www.encountergkchesterton.com. Yeah, I'm just looking at my webpage now going, oh, I should fix that.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate it. I'd love to come out to Franciscan sometime, work with the athletes, meet you in person, everything.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, you've got such a great mission, and it's such a fit, you know, that it would be so helpful for, I think, our teams to have that kind of perspective as they're going into it, because their sports life can be a sacred vocation just as much as anything else if they treat it that way.
Right.
And everything we do should be to glorify God. So to have that mindset in their training and their conditioning and their playing will only make it better, you know? And you know, I appreciate having the time to, you know, babble at you. Like I said, actors are up till 3 a.m. and get up around noontime. So the fact that you got me here at 10 with some product placement from the donut shop.
Well, I'm more the evening guy too. If we would have spoke more beforehand, I think we would both realized we're both better off later in the day.
Oh, I hope so. I know it's just terrible when you're talking to somebody and you feel yourself just sort of drifting off and not making any sense. You're like, gosh, I hope he can rescue me, because I think I've just talked about nothing for 5 minutes.
Oh no, everything was great.
No, that was
John
good.
Walker, thank you very much. Hope everyone checks you out and everything, all the great stuff you're doing. Thank you.
And then same to you. God bless you, Gene.
God bless you.
All right, buddy.
Yeah.